10:05, and the current temperature is 22 degrees. I'm Sam Scott for KTUI.
Hey, good morning and welcome back. Here we are live at the White Mule Winery on the high plains of Gasconade County. 37 degrees here at airtime, and a rainy, dismal, cloudy one we have. Last night, late, probably earlier this morning, a big shower came through, a lot of wind, but I thought yesterday, after we had the shower, in all honesty, that the sun set and it was clear, and I thought, well, the calm after the storm, but not so much. Here we had it again, but we'll take it. 'Tis that time of the year, and at least the days are getting much longer, and we are heading towards the middle, and then will be the end of February, and things are really greening up. It's been unseasonably good with a few exceptions, so we'll take it. And we take that you had a great Valentine's Day and got to spend some time with your loved ones, and we appreciate all you out there that came here. We had a great weekend, and appreciate that, and it's a joy and a pleasure to be able to share a bit of that time with you. So thank you, everybody, and good to have you back here on KTUI 1560 AM, 94.1 FM, or possibly you're watching live on Facebook. Hey, we have a guest here that is really a frequent guest. I hope you don't mind me saying that, Jeannie, but get to see her, and her husband, come and eat. But actually, the first time that she joined us on the radio here, and Jeannie Jenkins is superintendent at Spring Bluff School District, and just Jeannie, it's really you've got to do an amazing job, because I know you to a degree, and I know the school district that you're in, and the performance of that school district is some of the best, if in the very, very, very best of the whole nation. That has got to be gratifying. That has to say something to not only you, but grandparents and parents and people that go to your district. It is a great school district, and we're going to get into what it takes to some degree to make a school district as good as yours. And there's other great school districts around.
Absolutely.
There's no doubt, and some that share your performance to a degree, but we're just blessed in our entire area to have the model schools that we do have, and you're the head part of that.
Well, I am these days, but I'll tell you, it goes further back than, for me coming to the district. So, some of the same expectations, the community support that's been ingrained in that district, started many, many years ago, and it's something that I think everyone values as parents, and that's why they, if they have grown up through Spring Bluff system, they try to get their way back, into the district as parents themselves, and they want their children to experience that as well. And as I mentioned just a little earlier, majority of our board is Spring Bluff alumni. Right now, we have about 40% of our staff that are Spring Bluff alumni.
Wow.
So, I think that speaks for itself too.
It perpetuates,
Yes.
perpetuating that particular model and that culture and that family, and supporting that institution with passion.
Yes.
And that's critical for any model, to have those attributes, that you have. But, when I kind of look through the numbers in regard to the standards that you set there for a blue ribbon school, all the way through the academic list. You were in the 98th percentile, math and reading and comprehension, or I don't even know how many categories are in that.
As far as MAP assessments go, we're tested in ELA, so it kind of encompasses all those, the reading and English and all that. Math, and then science, and then our 8th graders, they get tested a lot. So you also see like an end of course, so it's a high school level that K-8s have to also assess their students in. So our kids do very well, something that's consistent, and I think even our staff takes great pride in that. They know what it takes, and we kind of made some changes years ago. MAP has developed and evolved over the years, and everyone has a love-hate relationship with it, for sure.
Well, that's testing is testing.
It is. And we try to look at any of the assessment pieces, anything that we take and do assessments on. It's one piece of the puzzle that tells that story of that child, and we try to use it, knowing the MAP test is one moment of time. And some kids that are normally, they perform well in the classroom, they're not great test takers, so that you have to take those things into consideration and try to, figure out what is best, for those kids moving forward. And we've changed some practices, and rather than, back in the day, and maybe I'm going to show my age a little bit, it was kind of you stop and drop to get ready for MAP testing, but we don't. We changed our practices, like I said, several years ago, and we just started slowly integrating, because now that things are electronic, you do have to make sure the kids they understand how to take that test.
Right. The
types of questions that are going to be asked. So we try to embed that into our normal instruction, so we're not losing that time. And it's not a race. We have to get done by this time. We have to make sure they know all this information. We can continue learning and move it forward easily, and it seems to work out the best for kids.
Well, it makes sense. It makes sense not to. I think you call the term stop and drop or whatever. You said there, but there are, and I wasn't I wasn't good in school at all, but I was an exceptionally poor test taker. It just, I don't know. It didn't happen, for me. Better, as I got older,
Sure.
a little bit, and but it's just one of those things that anxieties, play a big role in that, and the more hype that is there, the kids that have any kind of those particular nervous tendencies or issues, they tend to get excitable and not to be able to focus, and that's a given. We
Sure.
see that every day in whatever field we're in. We see people not performing as they want to or they're capable of in high stress situations. So that's a good thing. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
Well, you're got to be inundated by the number of tests that the government makes you do, and I guess it is good to understand exactly what your needs that you as teachers and administrators need to focus in on. But you got to have the time and the talent in the administration and the teachers to get that done.
Sure, absolutely. And with it, with any assessment, if you don't have timely feedback, it's really irrelevant. And sometimes, over the course of the years, we haven't received timely feedback. So you're trying to make, unfortunately, some best guesses. What's your direction? Because each class is different. Each grade level. And even with COVID, the past couple of years, that's really changed how we approach things. And knowing that some kids, the performance is not where we may typically have seen it to be. Just because there's been a lot of changes in the last few years. Some kids have learned quite a bit from home, unfortunately, over the past two, and but we'll see, moving forward. So we do look at the data, but again, like I said, it's
Are you
one
comfortable
piece.
with the data thus far? Because comfortable. I know you had to see, and you got to take it with a lot of give and take,
Sure.
But we couldn't expect performance to be through the roof on the short-term situation because of COVID, could we?
Sure. No, we tried our best. I mean, we put a lot of measures in place to keep learning as consistent as we could from home as well as, in seat, depending on what that was going to look like. In each family, it just looks so differently, over the past 2 years. So looking in 22, our scores, are still great. Nothing I can complain about. Hopefully parents and kids aren't, upset with anything at all. We're still scoring well above where the state is at. Now, from 22 to 21, did we take a little slide back perhaps? Yeah, we did. But like you said,
Getting used to it and a lot of that is just getting used to how to do those things.
Sure.
How to teach from home, what you need to arm the kids with, getting into that groove or that teachable opportunity when their whole environment is totally upside down.
Right. So, when we were looking at that assessment data, we're looking at it for a couple different reasons. Some of our students are performing, so each individual child, on that basis, but we're also looking, instructionally, do we see some patterns or other things that we need to improve on, across grade levels? Are we missing one, particular concept across the board? So we do dive into it and look at it. And in this past year, we saw maybe more of a middle school drop in math. So, and like I said, you got to look back then 2 years, how much, what concepts do these kids not get in person? Because there is a difference. Absolutely is. And as much as we tried to keep that connection between home and school, through Google Classroom, whatnot, it still just isn't the same, for every child. So.
Is math one of the most challenging proficiencies when you're not face to face? More so than, reading?
I'm going to say yes, because I have this ongoing conversation with my math teacher. If she gets a little frustrated, she's like, oh, these kids aren't, I just can't get them to get this. And I'm like, I'll side with the kid every single time, because math is not hard. It's not easy. It's probably harder than probably any other subject area for kids to grasp. And, and some have those math number sense, math concepts, they can grasp those a whole lot easier than others. And I'm like, I'm going to side with them. So we got to think another way. How can we get this across?
And it's something that, for the most part, they can't take home to their parents or grandparents and have an understanding of the new method, and the new math, that is out there, because it has evolved way, beyond my understanding of it.
Yeah.
I even take a 7th or 8th grade. I mean, it's way beyond, fractions and, multiplying, adding, and dividing, which I was okay with.
Right.
But anymore, no. It's
Well, even with my own kids, and they'd come home with homework, and we got to a point, I want to say it was probably 4th, 5th grade, that they learned they better just figure out a time to get with that teacher because they didn't want to bring it home. It didn't necessarily end well with me trying to be the teacher, so.
And you got an engineer in the family, which never hurts. You know what I'm saying? Or, he probably, he hasn't been out that long, but it changed, since that. There's no doubt. Well, when we look at those core elements that take, to make a great school, the community is hardly ever gets talked about, but a very important part of it.
Absolutely. It's amazing, and even talking with Sam Scott, because he's a new grandparent in our building this year, and I said, oh, just wait till a concert rolls around, and you'll see, just the community that comes out to support our kids, and we really need to consider adding, bumping our parking lot out a little bit, just because we have great participation. Our parents do support. They have a connection with Spring Bluff, they still support for years and years to come. So it's those lifelong connections. It really is, and that does. You know, I was amazed my first day at Spring Bluff, so 16 years ago. And Kay Bilo
I was
was
going to
the
ask how
superintendent.
long you've been there. 16 years ago.
16 years ago. And she knew every student's name. Now, and we had more then. We're down a little bit now from numbers, but when I started, I think there were about 274 in the building. And she knew everyone, I mean, and didn't miss a beat. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I was so intimidated. I'm like, how am I ever going to know these kids? Because, you know, if you're in a larger district, you don't have those relationships. You just don't get to know them. You know, you're in, as a teacher, you know the kids in your class. You know, you really do. But, yeah, it's something. I mean, you know everyone in that building, and everyone knows each other.
You know, that sustaining resource, you know, the community that is out there, really, it goes very deep. It's not only culturally, but it's financially. You know, like Owensville School District, we're going to have an issue coming, a no bond issue to put in a theater and what have you. And you know, there's always discussion, you know, in regard to those, but I don't ever remember our district not supporting a particular need that was put before them, and that's amazing. And I know Spring Bluff does also. You know, they support financially to a very, very high degree. You know, even if you look at the property values, you know what I'm saying over there, those are all collectively supporting cores that is absolutely needed, you know, to keep things operating.
Absolutely. And for us, you know, schools are funded through local funding revenues, state revenues, federal revenues. And for us, you know, we're very reliant on our local. We're about 53% of our
Is
revenues.
that right?
We are. And for, you know, some of those reasons that you mentioned.
You know, that's amazing, because just going back to my legislative years, you know, you see in school districts that, you know, are way, way less than half of that, you know, supported locally. And where that money comes from makes all the difference in the world, don't it?
It does, but it's hard to explain sometimes, you know, of how your school is funded, because they're not funded the same across the state. And
they are not.
It does depend on your geographic location in the state.
And Owensville was just, you know, brought, we had legislation last year that was passed that put the dollar value modifier, you know, that you appreciated in Franklin County, that came to Owensville, because part of Owensville School District is in Franklin County.
Right.
So Franklin is urban, and when they put this dollar modifier on it, it's social, or it's economic, you know, situations in regard to that. So it boosted, you know, Owensville's, which are our two districts, a fair amount. And you know, they invested that in their teachers, and that's the other, one of the other elements that is so important, is the work and the effort that the teachers put forward. And while I'm talking about that, my hat's off to you and those teachers the last 2 years, you know, what they did and the stresses that they had to go through, and the concern about being where they were and not knowing, you know, the COVID situation, where we were and what we're doing. It had to weigh on you also, you know what I'm saying, to see your teachers and your kids functioning and performing in an unknown area that fear was the biggest thing out there.
Right.
And loss. You know what I mean? I mean, because everybody knows some people that they lost because it was deemed COVID.
Right.
You know, and that's concerning, and that's a very stressful situation for kids.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's awesome for what you guys went through, and I hope you as an administrator take it easy on the teachers a little bit, you know.
You know, I mean,
Yep.
things are a lot easier, a lot calmer now. I will say that, but you know, it was stressful. It absolutely was, and you know, it was tough on teachers because they worked hard. They really did to try to make that you know, learning seamless as possible. And you know, and you've got kids at home on Zoom, but you still have kids in the classroom, and you know, you're trying to manage both things. And you know, it was something they took a hold of, and they did, knowing that was the best we had to offer, you know, for the time being. But you know, it's great. We really haven't Zoomed any minor little situations, you know, this year. But you know, hopefully that is truly a thing of the past.
It's in the rearview mirror. We
It
pray
is.
and hope, you know, and you know, so, but you know, did an amazing job. But part of the motivation, a lot of the motivation in small communities, is the interconnectedness between everybody.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you know, the names that I know about around Spring Bluff that I grew up with are still there. You know what I'm saying? Just as they are in our particular community, and then probably part of your teachers. You know,
Absolutely.
I know that part of your teachers grew up there. So when you're related to a lot of people, and you have a big buy-in, don't you?
Oh, absolutely, we do. So, like I said, I mean, I can't speak, you know, any more highly of our community support because they come out, you know, anytime that there is a need, and we ask, you know, for assistance, they come out and they support us. You know, last year we did go for a little bit of a tax levy increase. Unfortunately, we had to roll back because of the lawsuit, the Blankenship
Right.
lawsuit. So that did impact us. And, you know, they came out, they supported it, and, you know, we were able to obviously use those funds for operating, which is what we need to maintain. And we, before that, I, you know, don't have that exact date, but I mean, it was probably 07, 08. I mean, had been quite a while before we went back to the voters and asked for anything. So I think we are pretty frugal, and the board is.
Of
You know,
course
with
they are.
taxpayers' money, and making sure that these kids are getting the best education, you know, for the money that we have, you know, and what we ask of our taxpayers. So we certainly don't want to ask for anything more than what we need. And with that said, you know, this year taking teacher salaries, the base salary up to $38,000, you know, across the state, you know, looks different for everyone, and I totally understand that. And we weren't too far off, honestly, where we're at. I think our salary schedule is pretty competitive, even with some area K-12s. It wasn't really going to benefit us to take part of the state grant that kind of boost up. It was really going to make little impact, and the board just made the decision. We know we need to be there, so let's just make the move. And so we did make that move, and so everyone saw that increase. You know, and I think
And supported it, you know.
and supported it, and our teachers, you know, appreciate that. They know our board is making every effort, you know, to increase their salaries as they can. You know, they're open to that, and there's always, I think, good communication with our staff as well as our board, you know, and talking about those types of things, any things that our staff may need. So, again, of course, I'm partial to our.
Well, let's hope, yeah. You are.
To our staff, really can't sing their praises enough. They have, like I said, worked extremely hard. I've worked with a good majority of them now for 16 years. And there's quite a few getting on that far end of, you know, are closer to retirement every day. And I guess the real concern lies with
What do you see coming down the pike?
And that is a concern. Like I said earlier, you know, we have about 40% of Spring Bluff graduates who are in our building working in one capacity or another. But you just don't see that. You don't see people entering the profession, you know, or if they do, they quickly change direction, you know, in college. So the 38, I think, was a good first step. But it seems like we're getting hung up there. I mean, we've got to keep moving. When we have to, as a state, we've got to move a little faster, a little a little further with that if we're going to attract people and quality people. Because there's alternate ways to get into education, and I don't know where this came out or where the thought came that teaching's easy. Because it isn't, and
No.
the misconception that you have your summers off. You get a little bit of downtime, but if you're a true teacher at heart, you're working. You are planning for the next year. You're working. It's just how it is if you are a true teacher at heart. So we've seen some people that have entered the profession alternate ways, and you know what? They don't last. They don't stay. And so I get we're filling classrooms with a person, but it's not the right people. So.
When I was in the legislature, my legislative assistant, part of my staff, kind of had been there, a long time, and she kind of looked over my profile and said, Charlie, you're excellent at business, you're excellent, at farming, you're good at government, because I'd served before. She said, you don't know diddly about education, do you? Because I hadn't went to I had just started to go to college at that point. But she said, even though I had 3 kids, she said, you just, you're not, your core is not very good at education. She said, I'm going to help you fix that. And I said, okay. So she scheduled me for virtually every classroom in my district from kindergarten to East Central, okay? Mm-hmm. And I went through that over a couple of years and, read to the kindergartners, and a few classes that Mr. Waters had in East Central I lectured to or whatever. And I thoroughly enjoyed it, of course, because I like to talk, you know what I'm saying? But, what I learned within a very short period of time, that I could walk into a classroom and understand where the teacher was and where the kids were, and realize that I had to be so animated, mm-hmm. I had to be so up for talking and reading to kindergartens that talking with anybody to keep their attention, that I had an unbelievable higher respect for what teachers do and what they have to do, and how you can't be a good teacher. Maybe you can, but the passion mm-hmm. that they have to have and carry forward is seen through and through. And I could tell it in a classroom if the teacher, within 3 minutes, whether or not they or he had their attention, right. or if they didn't. And I'm sure as an administrator you watch that also. But,
absolutely. Absolutely.
It's amazing.
Mm-hmm. It is. And, and what you're talking about is, teachers in front of a classroom and working with kids, that's what they love. But unfortunately, there's so much more put on a teacher's plate these days that, people don't realize and understand. And that's the part that really it makes it challenging, and we'll see after this session, what else may be tossed on our plates. And
yes.
some of that is kind of hard to, when you start your profession and you didn't have that, you really enjoyed your job. You're focusing on teaching and, different ways of working with students and instructing and getting them just to love reading and just enjoying learning, and now it seems so much, we're having to justify, it seems like every move, that's being made, and that,
scrutinized for every word and every thing that you're teaching, and, looking at the books are there. And I'm not saying that it's not important to do.
Sure.
But, alternative views are important exposure also. Mm-hmm. Not that alternative, you know what I'm saying? But,
right.
But, there needs to be a certain good mix, or a mix when it regards to history, and
sure.
and the black history and those particular things. It needs to be exposed, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. What actually has happened, in my opinion, mm-hmm. Not to take down necessarily the Confederate flag, you know what I'm saying? Just because of whatever, and if it's set up for racism, I'm not, not far that, of course, but it is an important, and the statutes, they've been taken down, and what we do in the classroom is an important part of American history, and let us not forget those things.
Right, right.
And you're the teacher, you got to figure out how to teach it. So, in your model, one of the greatest things that I looked at and seen was your student-teacher ratio. You know what I'm saying? Or that's ultimately awesome. Because it gives you some time, teachers, to work with those kids.
Absolutely. I'd say, well, I brought my current
Well,
enrollment. I mean, yes, DESE has standards, obviously, for a classroom size minimum, and then a maximum, and then you can add another aid in there, to help support. But for the most part, our stance on that, as well as the boards, is, the smaller the class size, and if we can put a certified teacher in that classroom, it's a better option than having a teacher plus an aide with an extra 15 kids,
Of course.
So that is really kind of the model we focus on. So sometimes our class sizes, people are like, that's unheard of. But again, our community supports that, and that's where those dollars are going,
And I'm going to support it because I might have grandkids
That's
going
right.
there. Let me warn you a little.
So,
No,
you have a few.
It's, yeah, I mean, it's important to have that particular kind of model as a whole, not necessarily in the classroom, but the way I view things is to have, especially up to certain grade, and I don't know if it's 8th or, what I'm saying, or if it's 5th or whatever it is, but to have enough diversity in the classroom where kids can be exposed to different personalities, to different core beliefs maybe to some degree, and still learn how to adapt, what I'm saying, to those kind of things is tremendously important to have enough diversity there
Right.
for them to be ready for the world.
Absolutely.
And you got to have XYZ kids to be able to do that. There's no question that that's an important part of it. So do you have legislatively anything that you're watching as a superintendent that will have an impact or could have an impact on our kids in rural Missouri?
Oh, absolutely. There's a couple things. Probably the one we're hearing the most about right now is open enrollment. So there's, one House bill, I think it's House Bill 253, and there's a couple of Senate bills out there. All similar concepts with some differences, of course, involved, and we'll see how things kind of, end. But open enrollment's been something that's been around. We've been hearing about it for years and years. However, it's a pretty simple concept. Most people, when you hear that, but it's pretty complicated when you start getting into it. If anyone ever reads, the bill, the language that's out there, and all three of these, there are some discrepancies. We're kind of leaning towards discrimination of some of our most vulnerable groups of students. One bill,
Yes.
you can, I'll take you, but not you, is kind of how that's set up. So, public education, that totally goes against, everything that public education stands for. And we're kind of drawing the line in the sand as far as the haves and the have-nots. Those families that can make those situations work, where they can transport their child to a neighboring district or wherever. It might be out of convenience. It might be they have better programs that they think they want the child to participate in. Those that can't do that are left behind. And then, how that works, how the funding works. If you less kids, less funding, so those that are left, most likely those, there's programs that are going to be dropped because you no longer have the funding sources for those. So, and this is for big districts, this is for small districts, across the board. And I've had some say, well, it could benefit your district and you might get some kids. Maybe, maybe not. I might have some kids that, are families that choose, they want to leave because maybe there's a better sports program down the road they feel they can participate in. It kind of might be far and few between, but there might be that option. You know, you have some families that leave for those reasons. You know, it's one of those things, and not knowing, you know, truly where that funding source is, you know, and
Money, and that's the whole thing of it. You know, in any school choice, money flows with the student.
well, the state funding, so then your locals left.
Right, right.
But, you know, and if,
Or federal, whatever.
sure, yeah, and then I don't know how far you ever dug into the foundation formula.
Further than I wanted to.
So you know that obviously if you're not charging or levying that rate for your district, the performance rate, which is $3.43, then you get that deducted from your state formula money.
Yes.
So, and you know, and most districts aren't levying that. So whatever the state calculates out, that 63.75, which is our state adequacy target right now, you know, is not truly what districts are getting. So it's a little bit of a misconception there. So are they truly going, is that money, that 63.75, truly going to follow? You know, I mean, what does that truly look like? So some concerns there. And then, you know, if, say, we get 40, 50 more kids, we need to add on to our building. We can't hold that many kids. It's on the local taxpayer to, you know,
course it
foot
is.
that bill. So for non-resident students and what their needs are. So, you know, as a taxpayer, I think there should be some concern with how these bills are written and what it could do, you know, to local districts.
And you know, they were there when I was there, and the argument, you know, at that point, I, you know, said, you know, in my particular area, in my particular district, show me what's broken here. Mm-hmm. You know, as a product of public education, show me, you know, what performance or what is broken here. And I understand what's broken in the inner cities. You know, I totally get that. And, but, you know, I'm not so sure, you know, what's going to happen exactly the points that you brought. Who's going to go where, you know what I'm saying? And yes, there's nothing wrong with, you know, competition. But is it really competition, you know what I'm saying, for all the kids? And it's not.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? To them, they're going to be the haves and the have-not to a big degree.
Absolutely.
And, you know, those haves, not financially, but the best thing about public education is those haves with, you know, good homes, you know, good resources out there. They have to help the have-nots, you know what I'm saying, with social, you know, issues and, you know, the whole ball of wax. So, you know, it's a tough thing, even though I understand, you know, the concepts here, and I probably feel a little different about it today. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying, with some of the stuff that appears to be going on in not our area, right, but in other areas, and thinking, well, I know what dragged, you know what I'm saying, coming to my school district, you know what I'm saying, we gotta, you know.
Right.
Wow, who had ever thought we'd have been there?
I mean, a lot of concerns. So yes, and you know, and I get it. And some of the legislation that comes out, I'm like, did anyone seriously think about this and how, you know, it would truly impact? Just, you know, for instance, last year, Senate Bill 681 and this reading new statute that we're all trying to work through. You know, it should have gone into effect, and just by the time the information can get rolled out, or that you decipher this legislation, you know, I mean, we're so deep and, you know, and really not moving forward with it. So
right.
I think schools have been accused of not wanting to change. You know, we're digging heels in, and I'm thinking, you know, every year we get policy updates based on, you know, the most current legislation session, and there's a lot of change happening. Maybe not at the rate some would like to see it, but there's a lot. And, you know, I said back to this reading bill, you know, the other day we got the first bit of guidance from DESE on it, and I get it, they have to decipher it themselves. But step one is 65.
Shouldn't be that hard.
Step one is 65 pages on how to write your reading plan.
Yeah, wow.
So step one. So these are
Wow.
some of the things that, you know, it's just very cumbersome on districts, you know, trying to find staffing. And, you know, in our size district, you have very few personnel that's going to be working on that. So, you know, the burden of that goes on one or two people at most. to write those plans and get those things approved and, getting that information out and focusing on it. So, just, that's a concern from a small school, standpoint, as far as legislation in general, and how it impacts us. And again, just that reminder that, it affects every district differently.
Some of the good things that happened, though, in legislation over the last, couple of years is basically taking a little bit better care of our teachers, from the state level. I don't know exactly, what those numbers were, but I think it is important, to be able to have some, have money there to support the skill set of our teachers, to make sure that we continue to
Sure.
motivate them, or not even motivate them, but be able to live,
Right.
on the salary that we're doing. So, I think the legislature, was it 30-some thousand, 38,000 a year floor, or no?
They haven't
is that
passed
just a
that.
goal?
That's the goal, to get that actually in place. They didn't get that changed. But
See,
they did
Judy,
support
I
a
even,
grant.
I don't, you don't
Yeah.
follow that, and I assumed that was it, but it ain't.
No, I mean, it's
It
not.
isn't.
It's not. There you go. It's not in statute yet that is the base, but that's the goal. And they did, supply some funding to get schools, as a grant. They're trying now to make that more permanent, and how to help schools
Okay.
maintain that 38,000 if they were able to use the grant this year to get their teachers up.
It's a worthy legislative discussion and a public
Yes.
discussion to have
Yes.
in regard to that.
One thing they did do, which is very beneficial to all districts, is fully funded the transportation. So that made a huge difference. And that's been underfunded for years and years and years. It seems to be was the area, if something had to go, it would come from transportation. But that made a big difference in our budget this year as well.
And Owensville really benefited, from that, because
Yeah.
we have one of the most expansive school districts. As a matter of fact, people that explain to them on how people that go to Spring Bluff can go to Owensville, part of those can go to Owensville, a high school, correct?
Absolutely. Actually, they can go to any high school. Since we're K-8 and we don't have a high school, they can go any high school. We have to designate one that we transport to, so we transport to Sullivan. Majority of our kids go
Okay.
there. We have,
So you don't transport any of those?
we don't. And
Okay.
every district has a little different decision, process on that. I think Londell, they transport to several high schools, but you only, by statute, have to designate one that you're going to transport to. Like I said, so the majority of our kids go to Sullivan, and that's where we transport. We have a couple that go to Union, and one in Washington right now. So, we pay tuition then to each of those districts.
Geographically, how big is
Spring Bluff.
Spring Bluff?
We're like right at, I think, about 70 square miles.
Okay. So reasonably sized, and that's like other schools. R2 is another school, similar to your Campbellton. Also, I mean, are they in that where they can? Are they the same model as you are? Like Campbellton School.
They're part of the Washington.
They're part of the
district.
Washington.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
So she's got several smaller elementaries that are part of her district. Some of those outlying communities there.
I didn't learn quite enough when I was in the classroom. Cool. They're very complicated,
Yeah.
because I was at New Haven and had Josh Hayner, who's Josh,
Yeah.
of course, and he said, "Do you realize that the Owensville School District are people right there, and pointed in that direction, goes all the way, what I'm saying, to that parameter." So anyway, transportation is a huge issue in in our area, and we don't get to take taxis or Uber to school.
That's right. Most of us don't anyway, right? Yeah. Yeah. Well, and the cost of, buses are, of course, just like anything else, are increasing. And, the last one we purchased was right at $80,000, and there's no bells and whistles to that thing. got an estimate the other day, and you're closer to the 90,000 mark now. So, and if you can get a hold of one,
Yeah.
so supply and demand, it's pretty tough. So transportation is an issue, and
All of these, public vehicles, Gracie's husband works Ben works at Lynn in the ambulance, making ambulances, and he said the other night when we have dinner how far behind they are. They just can't keep up. Well, that's just the way it is,
Right.
I mean, it's, the needs get pushed off and off and off, and then they're there, but, these are specialty markets,
Yeah.
and they command a higher price, because all of this, for the most part, is custom done,
Right.
and a lot of labor. So, hey, we're talking with Jeannie Jenkins, Superintendent of Spring Bluff School District, and just having a great chat here as far as I'm concerned. But we're going to take a little break here on KTUI 1560 AM, 94.1 FM, or Facebook Live. And Gracie is going to get us up to speed on what else is going on in our neck of the woods this weekend.
Yes, there is a spaghetti dinner live auction Saturday, February 25th. That will be held at the Rosebud Emmanuel Legion Hall, or American Legion Hall. They'll have spaghetti, meat sauce, salad, bread, and dessert. Dinner's from 4 to 7. Auction is from 7 to 8. Adults are $8 and ages 8 and under are $4. And that is sponsored by the Gaston County Threshers Association.
Really?
Gerald Knights of Columbus is having an all-you-can-eat fish fry Fridays every Friday through February 10th through March 31st from 4 until 7. That is dine-in or carry-out, and that is all-you-can-eat cod and shrimp. That's at the KFC Hall in Gerald. This Friday at the White Mule, we will be serving our steaks, Italian cheesy chicken, beef kebabs, country fried steak, and grilled shrimp from 5 until 8:30. Tom Norton will be here as entertainment starting at 6. Saturday is pizza, wings, and hamburgers from noon until 5, and then our steak dinners after that until 8:30. Sundays, all-you-can-eat pan-fried chicken from 11 until 3:30.
Who's playing, you say?
Tom Norton.
Tom Norton.
Yeah, he's been here a few times. He's very good. One-man band.
Very good. So while we're talking about food and good places to eat, let's talk about Spring Bluff's upcoming auction.
Okay.
When is that?
It is March 24th, so it's a little different than what we've done in the past. Normally, it's a Saturday event, but venue complications, so it is on a Friday night. So
Okay.
it's something different, but it is the 24th.
And do you have food there, or is it
Oh, we
just?
do. We do.
Okay.
It is catered, and I don't have that
It's
with
okay.
me.
It's
Sorry.
okay. But a meal and silent auction.
Yeah, the 24th. Yes, we do have silent auction. We have a live auction. So
Okay.
Robbie Birdeye always
Of
generously donates his time for that, and we appreciate him. Coming out to do that for us. It's just a good night. Good night for
Phenomenal, isn't it?
It is. Yes, they do a great job. The foundation, is made up of just some parents and community members, and they put in a ton of time to get it organized and get it ready, and then host that night. I mean, it's a long day for them, especially if they're going to be on a Friday. Everyone's working, or some of them are taking off half a day to help us out, and to get things up and running. But it's a long night, but it's good. It's always a good time.
And you get to be there for every long night. You know what I'm saying? That's something that I don't think most people understand how many hours you as an administrator have to be put in. Because you're probably at ball games and through and through. You don't miss many.
No, I don't. And I mean, this year I do have some help with some lead teachers that have taken on some of those roles for me. So they've helped out a lot.
When we talk about these particular benefits, one of the things about our area as a whole is just the generosity of people and what they do and how much they give back and the philanthropy that they indulge in. We do a fair amount of benefits here, for different causes, and amazing to me, amazing how much money is raised, and that's awesome,
Yeah.
people support what they support, and
They do, and typically, after all expenses, I think the foundation normally raises about 25,000. So,
that's great.
yeah, yeah.
And we'll be part of that too.
Well, fantastic. Thank you.
We'll do what we can there. So, what do you got on the agenda? I know by going past your school, evenings and going and seeing my grandkids, that you've always got something going on there on the parking lot. And I will agree with you that your parking lot isn't that big, because I was pulling a trailer back from Woody's one time. My truck went down. I had to park on your parking lot. But anyway, a lot of sports going on there, and a lot of involvement, and that's fun.
Yes. We just wrapped up our basketball season, so that's, set aside now, and now it's a little more academics. We're starting our Scholar Bowl competition, so that will go on for several weeks and wrap up in March, so that's always fun. Gives kids who, maybe are not, we have kids from, that participate in sports that also come out for that as well, but you have some of those kids that don't participate in sports, and this
Right.
is something for them to take part in, and they love it. It's fun. The parents enjoy it, and it's just,
Grandparents really, really enjoy it.
they do.
You
So
know.
they get to come out and watch them, and then the finals, like I said, will be in March, so.
So that's awesome, and you keep the kids involved and the community involved, and that's all good. And I thank you for what you do, and all the teachers there, all the administrators, and what a job you do, and how blessed we are to live where we live, and have the opportunity, for our kids and our grandkids, to just be exposed to everything that we are. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Jeannie. Appreciate you being here, and we'll have you back, and take care of everybody and tell them thanks.
Will
at the
do.
School,
Will
okay? And Gracie, what you got anything else? What's going on here this week?
We had a
Who,
pretty,
okay.
no, you're good.
Well, who? No, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say we had a pretty big weekend.
Oh,
so
right,
I wanna
right.
thank everybody for that.
Yes.
Kind of be quiet maybe.
Next week is what I was thinking. Who-
Oh, for show.
Yeah.
Not sure yet, but we'll have somebody.
We'll have somebody next week. We've got several lined up, so good for you to be along with us, and God bless you, and we will see you next week.
I did. Bought it cheap online. Follow me. We'll turn off here.
I'm right behind you.
Watch the car.